Tonight, you'll practice slow English through a quiet story from Havenport. A woman works late in a small watch repair shop. Every night, she sees the same light in the window across the street. But one evening, the light does not turn on. I'll speak slowly and clearly so you can relax, listen, and improve your English naturally. Welcome to Nightwave English. Good evening, listeners. You are listening to a late-night English broadcast from Lumen District in the quiet coastal city of Havenport. Outside the studio window, rain is falling softly over the rooftops. It touches the glass. It moves down the windows. It makes the streets shine under the lamps. Tonight, the city feels still. Not empty, just still. Some people are asleep. Some people are working late. Some people are looking out of their windows, watching the rain fall on the quiet streets below. And maybe you are here too, listening from your room, your desk, your bed, or somewhere between sleep and study. Tonight, you do not need to hurry. You do not need to understand every word. Just listen. Follow the story. Let the English come to you slowly. Little by little, it will become clearer. Tonight's story is called The Window Across the Street. But first, let's begin with the weather in Havenport. This is the Nightwave weather report for Havenport. Tonight, light rain continues across most of the city. The temperature is around 9 degrees Celsius. The air is cool, but calm. There is very little wind tonight. Near the harbor, the water is dark and quiet. Small waves move against the docks. In Old Market, most shops have already closed. Their signs are off. Their doors are locked, but a few upstairs windows still glow warmly above the street. In Lumen District, the rain is gentle. Not heavy, not loud. Just a soft, steady rain. The kind of rain that makes a room feel warmer. The kind of rain that makes a cup of tea feel more important. The kind of rain that makes a window feel like a place to sit beside. Tonight's useful expression is across the street. Across the street means on the other side of the road. Not far away. Not in another neighborhood. Just opposite you. On the other side. For example, a cafe can be across the street. An apartment can be across the street. A person can live across the street. In tonight's story, Clara works in a small shop. And every night, she sees a window across the street. Keep that expression in mind as you listen tonight. Across the street. On the other side of the road. Close enough to see, but far enough to remain a mystery. And now, let's begin. Clara repaired watches. Small watches. Old watches. Expensive watches. Cheap watches. Watches that had stopped moving years ago. Watches with broken glass. Watches with tiny hands that no longer knew what time it was. Her workshop was on the second floor of an old building in Lumen District. A workshop is a place where someone makes or repairs things. Clara's workshop was small, but she loved it. There was a wooden desk beside the window, a yellow lamp, several tiny screwdrivers, a magnifying glass, small boxes full of metal pieces, and on the wall, an old clock that always ran 3 minutes late. Clara did not fix that clock. She liked it that way. It reminded her that not everything needed to be perfect. Every evening, after the shops below closed and the street became quiet, Clara stayed in her workshop a little longer. sometimes for 1 hour, sometimes for 2, sometimes until after midnight. She liked working late. The city felt softer at night. The phone did not ring. No customers came upstairs. No one asked if their watch was ready. There was only the rain, the warm light of her desk lamp, and the quiet sound of tiny tools touching metal. Outside her window, Lumen District stretched into the night. The street below was narrow. There were trees on both sides. There were old apartment buildings with balconies full of plants. In summer, the balconies were green and full of flowers. In winter, they were quiet and dark. But even in winter, some people kept small plants outside, protected under the roof of the balcony. Clara noticed these things. She noticed everything. That was part of her work. To notice means to see something and pay attention to it. A person who repairs watches must notice small details: a tiny scratch, a loose screw, a sound that should not be there, a hand that moves too slowly, a number that is slightly out of place. Clara noticed details in watches, and she noticed details in the city too. She noticed when the bakery changed its window display. She noticed when the old man downstairs bought a new blue umbrella. She noticed when the street lamp near the corner started flickering. And she noticed the window across the street. The window belonged to an apartment on the 3rd floor of the building opposite her workshop. Not directly opposite. A little to the left. Clara could see it clearly when she sat at her desk. It had thin white curtains, a few plants on the inside ledge, and a small round lamp that gave off a warm orange light. A window ledge is the flat part at the bottom of a window. People often place plants, books, or cups on a window ledge. In that apartment, someone had placed 3 plants on the ledge. 1 tall plant, 1 small plant, and 1 plant with long leaves that fell down like green ribbons. Every night, around 11:15, the same thing happened. The orange lamp turned on. A person opened the window slightly. Then a white cup appeared on the window ledge. Always the same cup. Always the same place. Clara never saw the person clearly. Only a hand, a sleeve, sometimes the side of a face, sometimes a shadow moving behind the curtain. But that was enough. Over time, the window became part of Clara's evening. She would repair watches. The rain would fall. The old wall clock would fall 3 minutes behind the world. And at 11:15, the warm light across the street would turn on. It became a routine. A routine is something you do again and again. Something familiar. Something repeated. Some routines are boring, but some routines are comforting. A cup of coffee in the morning, a walk after dinner, a radio broadcast at night, a light in the window across the street. Clara never spoke to the person in the apartment. She did not know their name. She did not know if they were old or young. She did not know if they lived alone. But their quiet presence became part of the night. A quiet presence is someone or something that is there, but not loud, not demanding attention, just present, like rain on the window, like a lamp in the corner, like a cat sleeping in another room, like a small light across the street. One Thursday night, Clara was repairing a silver watch with a broken strap. The rain was heavier than usual. It hit the windows in quick, soft bursts. Below, the street was empty except for one parked bicycle and a delivery van with its lights off. Clara looked up at the clock. 11:12. 3 minutes until the light. She smiled without thinking. Then she returned to the watch. The strap was difficult. The metal was old. Her fingers moved carefully. The work required patience. Patience means the ability to wait or continue calmly, even when something takes time. Clara had patience. She had learned it from watches. You cannot force a small machine to work. You cannot rush tiny pieces of metal. You have to breathe, look closely, try again, and if it does not work, you try again more gently. At 11:18, Clara looked up. The window across the street was still dark. She paused. Maybe the person was late. That happened sometimes. Not often, but sometimes. She returned to the watch. 11:25, still dark. 11:40, still dark. The white curtains did not move. No orange light. No hand opening the window. No cup on the ledge. Nothing. Clara told herself it was normal. People go out. People sleep early. People change their routines. A window does not have to turn on every night. But still, the street felt different. The rain sounded louder. The workshop felt bigger. The empty window across the street seemed to pull her attention again and again. By midnight, Clara had stopped working. The watch was still open on the desk. The tiny screws waited beside it. The old wall clock kept moving, 3 minutes late as always. Clara stood by the window and looked across the street. The apartment remained dark. For the first time in months, the night felt incomplete. The next evening, the same thing happened. Clara tried not to watch the clock. She tried not to look across the street. She made tea. She cleaned her tools. She answered 2 emails. She repaired a small gold watch that belonged to a woman from Old Market. But at 11:15, her eyes moved toward the window. Dark. At 11:30, still dark. At midnight, still dark. The routine was broken. Broken is a simple word, but it can mean many things. A broken watch, a broken glass, a broken promise, a broken routine. Something that used to work does not work anymore. Something that used to be there is gone. Clara sat back in her chair. She felt strange. It was not exactly sadness. It was not fear. It was more like missing something she had never really owned. A light, a small routine, a quiet stranger, someone across the street. On Saturday, the rain stopped for a few hours. The city looked clean and pale under the morning sky. Clara did not usually work on Saturday morning, but she went to the workshop anyway. She told herself she needed to pick up a tool. That was partly true, but not completely. She also wanted to see the building across the street in daylight. In daylight, it looked ordinary. Brown bricks, green balconies, mailboxes near the entrance, a front door painted dark blue. Nothing mysterious, nothing dramatic, just an apartment building. Clara stood on the sidewalk for a moment. She felt a little silly. She was not a detective. She was not looking for a secret. She was just a woman who repaired watches and had become used to a light. Still, she crossed a street, across the street, on the other side of the road, the expression from tonight's broadcast. Clara crossed the street and stood in front of the blue door. There were names beside the buzzers, small printed names, some clear, some faded. One name had been removed. On the 3rd floor, beside apartment 3B, there was only a pale rectangle where a name had once been. Someone had taken it off. Clara looked at the empty space. Then she noticed a small envelope placed carefully above the mailboxes. It was not inside a mailbox. It was resting on top, as if someone had left it there on purpose. On the envelope, written in blue ink, were 4 words. For the watchmaker opposite. Clara stared at the envelope. The watchmaker opposite. That was her. Opposite means facing something from the other side. It is very close to across the street. The apartment was opposite her workshop. The window was opposite her window. And the envelope was for her. Clara picked it up carefully. The paper was dry, protected from the rain by the small roof inside the entrance. She looked around. No one was there. The stairwell was quiet. The building smelled faintly of old wood, soap, and someone's lunch cooking upstairs. Clara took the envelope back to her workshop. She did not open it immediately. First, she made tea. Then, she sat at her desk. The window across the street was visible behind the envelope, still dark, still quiet. Finally, she opened it. Inside was a short note. The handwriting was careful, but a little shaky. It said, "Thank you for keeping the light on. I used to see your lamp every night from my window. I never knew your name. But your light made the street feel less empty. I am moving closer to my daughter now. The apartment will be dark for a while. But I wanted you to know that your window helped me too. With kindness, Evelyn." Clara read the note once, then again, then a third time. Thank you for keeping the light on. She looked at her desk lamp. The yellow light, the tiny tools, the open watch, the old clock on the wall. She had thought she was the one watching. She had thought the window across the street belonged to someone who kept her company. But all that time, her own lamp had been doing the same thing for someone else. Her own quiet presence had crossed the street, without words, without introductions, without even knowing. That night, Clara stayed late again. Not because she had to, because she wanted to. The apartment across the street was still dark. No orange lamp, no white cup, no plants on the ledge. But Clara turned on her desk lamp anyway. She opened the silver watch. She placed the tiny screws in a careful line. She adjusted the strap. She worked slowly, patiently. Outside, the rain returned. It started as a drizzle, then became steady. The drops moved down the glass. The streetlights reflected in the wet road. Somewhere below, a person walked quickly under an umbrella. A bus passed almost empty. A cat sat under a balcony watching the rain. Clara looked across the street. The empty window was dark, but it did not feel as empty as before. Now it had a name. Evelyn. The person in the apartment had not been a mystery. She had been a woman preparing to move. A woman with a daughter. A woman who drank from a white cup at night. A woman who looked across the street and saw Clara's lamp. Sometimes, a connection is very small. A light in a window. A cup on a ledge. A routine shared by 2 people who never speak. But small does not mean meaningless. Small things can keep us company. Small things can make a city feel kinder. Small things can help us feel less alone. A few days later, new people moved into apartment 3B. Clara saw boxes, a young couple, a child with a red backpack, a tall plant carried carefully up the stairs. For 2 nights, the apartment stayed busy. Lights on, lights off, shadows moving, furniture being placed. Clara tried not to watch too much. It was their home now, not her story. But on the 3rd night, around 11:15, a small lamp turned on in the window. Not orange this time, a softer yellow. The curtains were different. The plants were different. There was no white cup on the ledge, but the light was there. Clara smiled. She took Evelyn's note from the drawer and read the first line again. "Thank you for keeping the light on." Then she placed the note carefully inside a small wooden box on her desk. The box was where she kept things that mattered: old watch hands, a photograph of her father, a train ticket from a trip she had taken years ago, and now, a note from someone across the street. That evening, Clara repaired the silver watch completely. When she finished, she held it close to her ear. Tick, tick, tick. The sound was small but steady, a watch coming back to life. She smiled. Then she looked at the old wall clock. Still 3 minutes late. She thought about fixing it. Just for a moment. Then she decided not to. Some things are allowed to be a little late. Some things are allowed to be imperfect. Some things are allowed to continue exactly as they are. Outside, the new light across the street glowed softly. Inside, Clara's lamp glowed too. Between the two windows, rain fell through the dark air, and for a moment, Lumen District felt like one quiet room. Not a collection of strangers, not just buildings and roads, but a place full of small lights, each one belonging to someone, each one saying in its own way, "I am here." And that is the end of tonight's story. The window across the street was never just a window. It was a reminder that we can matter to people without knowing it, that our small routines can comfort someone else, that a light left on at night can become a quiet form of kindness. And sometimes, without saying a single word, two people can keep each other company from across the street. You're listening to Nightwave English, broadcasting from Lumen District in Havenport. The rain is still falling softly outside the studio. Now, let's read tonight's listener message. Tonight's message comes from a listener named Anna. She writes that she often listens while studying alone in the evening. Some nights, she feels motivated. Other nights, she feels tired before she even opens her notebook. But she says the same routine helps her continue. A cup of tea, a quiet room, a notebook, and one English broadcast playing in the background. She says she does not always understand everything, but she understands more than last month, and that is enough to keep going. Thank you, Anna. That message fits tonight's story perfectly. Learning English is often quiet work. It is not always exciting. It is not always fast. Sometimes it is simply showing up again, opening the notebook again, listening again, trying again. A routine can help. A routine can hold you when motivation is low. Motivation comes and goes, but a routine can stay. Tonight, remember this simple idea. You do not need to make huge progress every day. You only need to return. Return to the sound. Return to the words. Return to the story. Return to the light. Little by little, English becomes more familiar, and familiar things feel less frightening. Before we close tonight's episode, let's take a quiet look at Havenport. It is after midnight now. The city is soft and dark. In Lumen District, the streets are wet and almost empty. A few lights remain on above the shops. A lamp in a kitchen, a small screen in a bedroom, a yellow glow behind thin curtains, a desk lamp in a workshop. Across the street, another window answers with its own light. Rain falls between the buildings. It touches balconies full of plants. It gathers on window ledges. It shines on the leaves. The whole district seems to breathe slowly. A late bus moves through the street, carrying only 3 passengers. A woman closes a cafe and turns the sign around. A man stands on his balcony with a cup in his hands. Somewhere, someone is brushing their teeth. Somewhere, someone is writing a message they may not send. Somewhere, someone is learning a new word in English. The city is full of small private moments. Most of them will never be seen. Most of them will never be written down. But they still matter. A light matters. A routine matters. A person sitting quietly at a desk matters. You, listening tonight, matter too. If you are tired, take your time. If you do not understand every sentence, take your time. If English still feels far away, take your time. The road becomes clearer by walking. The language becomes clearer by listening. And tonight, all you need to do is stay with the sound a little longer. The rain continues. The windows glow. And somewhere in Havenport, a watch begins to tick again. Let's review a few words and expressions from tonight. Across the street means on the other side of the road. The window was across the street. Workshop is a place where someone makes or repairs things. Clara worked in a watch repair workshop. To notice means to see something and pay attention to it. Clara noticed small details. Routine means something you do again and again. The light in the window became part of her routine. Window ledge is the flat part at the bottom of a window. The white cup sat on the window ledge. Quiet presence means someone or something that is there in a calm, gentle way. The light became a quiet presence. Broken means something does not work anymore. A broken watch, a broken routine. Opposite means facing something from the other side. The apartment was opposite Clara's workshop. And tonight's important phrase, thank you for keeping the light on. In the story, this sentence means more than the physical light. It means, thank you for being there. Thank you for being part of my night. Thank you for making the street feel less empty. Keep this phrase with you tonight. Keeping the light on. Sometimes it simply means leaving a lamp on, but sometimes it means staying present, being kind, continuing, even quietly. This has been Nightwave English, broadcasting from Lumen District in the quiet coastal city of Havenport. Tonight's episode was The Window Across the Street. Thank you for spending part of your night with us. If you listened to the whole story, well done. If you understood only part of it, that is also good. Every minute of listening helps. Every story makes English a little more familiar, and every quiet routine can become progress over time. Until next time, stay warm, stay curious, and wherever you are tonight, I hope there is a small light nearby to keep you company. Good night, listeners. I'll meet you again after midnight.